The Tenacious Dawn docked at Helion Prime Station 3 days after they sent their final report, and the bay was crowded with officials and medical personnel and security, and Tai Sung walked down the ramp on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else, and behind him came Junwoo and Prill and Unlar and Crixtel, and they moved like survivors of a shipwreck, and hollow-eyed and changed. Admiral Korvax stood waiting, and his regenerated teeth gleamed white against his dark scales, and his yellow eyes scanned each crew member as they passed, and when Taesung reached him, the Admiral's expression was unreadable in report, and he said, and Taesung's voice was flat, and mission successful, and the dimensional breach is sealed, and the entity is contained, and 73 researchers are lost, and Cadet Hyejin gave her life to ensure the gateway was properly collapsed, and that is my report, sir. The Admiral was silent for a long moment, and then, and I am sorry for your loss, and his voice carried genuine weight, and she will be remembered, and he gestured, and you are all confined to medical observation for 72 hours, and after that we will debrief fully and go and rest. The medical bay was quiet, and each crew member was assigned a private room, and doctors ran tests and asked questions and measured things that Taesung did not understand, and he lay in the hospital bed and stared at the ceiling and tried not to see Hyejin's face, and tried not to hear her last words, and tried not to think about the fact that he had let her go back and let her sacrifice herself, and he knew it was what had to happen, but knowing did not make it easier. Junwoo came to visit on the second day, and he sat in the chair beside Taesung's bed, and neither spoke for a while, and finally, and she knew what she was doing, and Junwoo said, and she made her choice, and we have to honor that. And Taesung turned his head, and how Junwoo's jaw clenched, and by finishing what we started, and by proving she was right to believe in us, on the third day Admiral Korvax came personally, and he dismissed the medical staff and stood at the foot of Taesung's bed, and the tribunal's decision has been overturned. And he said without preamble, and you are fully reinstated without probationary status, and furthermore, I am recommending you and your crew for the Coalition Star of Valor, and the medal will be awarded posthumously to Cadet Hyejin, and her name will be added to the memorial wall. Taesung sat up, and thank you, sir, but it feels hollow, and Korvax nodded, and it always does, and I've written too many of these commendations, and I have attended too many memorial services, and it never becomes easier. And he paused, but what you did out there, and what she did, and it prevented something catastrophic, and the entity could have spread beyond that station, and consumed entire sectors, and you stopped it. Did we? And Taesung asked, or did we just delay it, and will it come back? And the Admiral's expression was grave, and we do not know. And the scientists are studying your data now and trying to understand what you encountered, but this much is certain, and you and your crew faced something that should have destroyed you, and you remained functional, and you made decisions under conditions that would have broken most species, and that is what I was testing for, and that is what I needed to know. What happens now? And Taesung asked. Now you graduate, and Korvax said, and your class completes training in 3 months, and you will finish with honors, and then you will be assigned to a newly created division, and the Death Worlder Response Unit, and a team designed specifically to handle threats that the Coalition cannot face through conventional means. And he met Taesung's gaze, and you asked who was next. And now you know the answer, and you are next. And you and every human who follows you. And you are the ones who go into the dark places. The debriefing took place over 2 weeks, and Taesung and Junwoo and the others sat in conference rooms and answered questions and described what they had seen and felt and experienced, and the scientists were fascinated and horrified in equal measure. And they asked about the entity and about the dimensional breach and about how the humans had remained conscious when exposure to such phenomena should have caused immediate psychological collapse. One of the lead researchers was a Videnian named Caston, and it had skin like polished obsidian and eyes that reflected light like mirrors, and it kept returning to one question, and why did you survive when you should not have, and what is different about human neurology that allowed you to function? We evolved afraid, and Taesung said after the 5th time being asked, and every predator on Earth was either bigger or faster or stronger than us, and we survived by being more stubborn and more adaptable, and our brains are wired to keep functioning through absolute terror, because if we froze, we died. And the entity was terrifying. But it was just another predator, and just another thing trying to kill us, and we have been dealing with those for 2 million years. But this was not a predator. And Kastin protested, and this was a fundamental threat to your understanding of reality. And Junwoo laughed, and it was a sound without humor, and our understanding of reality has been threatened before. And we used to think thunder was God's bowling, and we used to think disease was caused by bad air. And we used to think the earth was flat, and we were wrong about all of it. And being wrong did not kill us, and we adapted, and we learned, and we moved forward, and this is no different. The memorial service for Hyejin was held in the Academy's Grand Hall, in the same place where Taesung had struck Admiral Korvax, and now it was filled with cadets and instructors and dignitaries from across the coalition, and a holographic image of Hyejin stood at the front, and her face was serious and calm, and exactly as Taesung remembered, and he stood in the front row between Junwoo and Prill, and felt tears on his face, and did not bother to hide them. Grand Magistrate Thelnora spoke, and its energy form glowed softly in the dim light. And sacrifice is the highest calling of service, and it said, and to give one's life so that others may live, is the ultimate expression of duty, and Cadet Hyejin understood this, and in her final moments she chose to protect not just her crew but the entire coalition. And her name will be remembered, and her courage will inspire generations to come. After the service, there was a reception, and beings from dozens of species approached Taesung and expressed condolences in their various ways, and some touched his shoulder, and some made sounds of mourning, and some simply stood near him in silent solidarity. And he appreciated all of it, and none of it. And nothing would bring Hyejin back, and nothing would erase the image of her running back into that darkness. Crixtel found him on an observation deck hours later, and the tall insectoid stood beside him, looking out at the stars. And I have been thinking about what she said, and Crixtel's voice was quiet, and about coming back and about trying. And she knew she would not survive, and yet she tried anyway. And that is the most human thing I have ever witnessed. And Taesung turned, and what do you mean? And Crixtel's compound eyes reflected the starlight. In my species, when we face impossible odds, we accept the outcome, and we die with dignity. And humans apparently do not accept anything, and you rage against the inevitable. And sometimes you win, and Hyejin did not win, but she tried. And that is different from anything in my cultural understanding. Is it better? And Taesung asked. And or just more painful? I do not know. And Crixtel admitted. But it is remarkable. The graduation ceremony came 3 months later, and Taesung stood with his class and received his commission as a full officer in the coalition military. And his uniform was crisp, and his insignia gleamed, and beside him, Junwoo looked equally sharp, and around them cadets from 40 species celebrated. And the ceremony was a spectacle of color and light and sound. And Taesung felt both pride and emptiness, because Hyejin should have been here, and should have stood with them. Admiral Korvax gave the keynote address, and he spoke about evolution and adaptation, and the future of the coalition. And his words were measured but carried weight. And for 50,000 years, we have built our civilization on species that evolved in safety. And he said, and we became wise and cautious and sophisticated, but we also became fragile, and we forgot that the universe is not inherently safe, and we simply lived in a protected corner of it. He turned to look directly at the human contingent, and there were 37 of them now, and more arriving every year. And humanity evolved differently, and you evolved in the crucible, and you are what happens when a species refuses to go extinct, and that makes you dangerous. Yes, but it also makes you exactly what we need as we expand into the unknown. The applause was thunderous, and Taesung saw that even species who had been hostile to humans months ago were now looking at them with something approaching respect. And the mission had changed things, and Hyejin's sacrifice had changed things, and maybe that was worth the cost, and maybe it was not. And he did not know. After the ceremony, Taesung found himself in the corridor outside the hall, and he stood before the memorial wall, and new names were added every year, and cadets who died in training or service, and their names etched in metal, and their faces preserved in light, and Hyejin's name was. Hyunwoo stood in the grand entrance hall of the Galactic Institute of Advanced Studies and felt very small. The ceiling stretched up so high that he could barely see where it ended, and the walls were made of some kind of glowing crystal that changed colors every few seconds. Students of all shapes and sizes moved through the space. Some walking on legs, some floating, and some doing something that looked like both at the same time. He adjusted the strap of his bag on his shoulder and took a deep breath. This was really happening. He was the first human exchange student at the most important school in the galaxy. A tall creature with purple skin and 3 eyes approached him. It wore a flowing robe that seemed to be made of liquid light. "You must be the human," it said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. "I am Professor Velthar. Welcome to Harmony Point." Hyunwoo bowed slightly, the way his mother had taught him. "Thank you for having me, Professor. I am honored to be here." Professor Velthar made a sound that might have been surprise. "You are very polite for a Deathworlder. Come, I will show you to the orientation hall. Your presence here has caused quite a stir among the students." As they walked through the corridors, Hyunwoo noticed something strange. Other students would see him coming and quickly move to the other side of the hallway. Some pressed themselves against the walls. A few even turned and went back the way they had come. He heard whispers following him like a wave. "Is that the human? I heard they come from a Class 12 Deathworld. My professor said humans can survive almost anything. They have forward-facing eyes like predators." Hyunwoo tried not to let it bother him. Earth had only joined the galactic community 3 years ago, and apparently the other species found humans terrifying. Something about Earth being extremely dangerous compared to most other planets. He didn't really understand it. Earth seemed pretty normal to him. The orientation hall was packed with students. Hyunwoo counted at least 30 different species in the room. Professor Velthar led him to the front and gestured to an empty seat. As soon as Hyunwoo sat down, the students on either side of him quickly moved to different chairs. A small creature that looked like a floating jellyfish drifted away so fast it bumped into the ceiling. "Students," Professor Velthar began, "we are privileged today to welcome our first human student to the Institute. Hyunwoo comes from Earth, a planet recently integrated into our community. I expect you all to treat him with respect and curiosity, not fear. We are here to learn about each other." An amphibious student with blue-green skin and large eyes raised a webbed hand. "Professor, is it true that humans are apex predators?" Professor Velthar looked uncomfortable. "Humans are omnivores, Taeyang. They eat both plants and meat. This is not uncommon in the galaxy. But their planet," Taeyang continued, his voice shaking slightly, "it has mega predators, volcanic activity, extreme weather, and toxic plants everywhere. How did they survive?" Hyunwoo decided to speak up. "We learned to adapt," he said simply. "And we made friends with some of the predators." The room went completely silent. Every eye, and there were many different types of eyes, focused on him. A student with 4 arms and rocky-looking skin spoke up. Her voice was strong but cautious. "What do you mean you made friends with predators? That is not possible." "Sure it is," Hyunwoo said with a smile. "I have a dog back home. His name is Bori. He is my best friend." "What is a dog?" asked a crystalline student with a musical voice. Her name tag said Jia, and she seemed less afraid than the others. "A dog is—" Hyunwoo paused, trying to think of how to explain it. "Well, dogs are descended from wolves. They are pack hunters with sharp teeth and strong jaws. They can run really fast and have excellent hearing and smell. Humans domesticated them thousands of years ago, and now they live with us in our homes." The room erupted in shocked sounds. Some students made high-pitched noises. Others made low rumbling sounds. Taeyang looked like he might faint. "You keep predators in your homes?" Bora, the 4-armed student, sounded horrified. "As pets?" "Yes," Hyunwoo said, confused by their reaction. "Lots of humans do. We also have cats. They are smaller predators with retractable claws and excellent night vision. Very independent. My sister has 3 cats." Jia leaned forward, her crystalline features flashing with interest despite her obvious nervousness. "And these predators do not attack you?" "No, they love us. We feed them and take care of them, and they become part of our families. Bori sleeps on my bed every night. He gets sad when I leave for school." Professor Velthar cleared his throat. "This is actually a fascinating aspect of human culture. Humans have formed symbiotic relationships with numerous species on their planet, including several that would be considered dangerous predators by galactic standards." "But why?" Taeyang asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why would you want to live with something that could hurt you?" Hyunwoo thought about this. "I guess we do not see them as dangerous. I mean, yes, a dog could bite and a cat could scratch, but they are also loyal and loving and funny. Bori makes me laugh every day. When I am sad, he puts his head on my lap. When I am happy, he wags his tail so hard his whole body shakes. He is not just a predator, he is my friend. The room was quiet again, but this time it felt different. Some students still looked afraid, but others seemed curious. Jia's crystalline body was glowing softly, which Hyunwoo guessed meant she was interested. Do all humans feel this way about animals? She asked. Most of us, yes. We even have places called zoos where we keep dangerous animals safe and let people learn about them. We have wildlife reserves to protect predators. Some humans dedicate their whole lives to studying and helping animals, even really dangerous ones like sharks and bears and big cats. What are sharks and bears and big cats? Several students asked at once. Hyunwoo grinned. Oh man, let me tell you. Sharks are these amazing fish with rows of sharp teeth. Bears are huge furry predators that can weigh as much as 10 humans. And big cats like lions and tigers are basically giant versions of house cats, but they can take down prey much larger than themselves. And humans interact with these creatures? Bora asked. Some do, yes. We study them, help injured ones, and work to make sure they do not go extinct. Professor Velthar stepped in before the students could ask more questions. I think this discussion shows exactly why cultural exchange is so important. What seems normal to one species can be completely shocking to another. Hyunwoo, your perspective will be valuable in our xenobiology classes. Now let us continue with the orientation. As Professor Velthar talked about class schedules and dormitory assignments, Hyunwoo noticed Jia watching him. When their eyes met, she did not look away like the others did. Instead, she made a gesture that her species must use for greeting. Hyunwoo smiled and waved back. Maybe he would make at least one friend here. After orientation, Jia approached him carefully. I hope I did not offend you with my questions, she said. Your culture is just very different from mine. No offense taken, Hyunwoo assured her. I am happy to answer questions. That is why I am here, right? To help everyone understand humans better. Would you show me pictures of your dog sometime? Jia asked shyly. I would like to understand how humans can live with predators. Sure, Hyunwoo said, pulling out his datapad. I have tons of pictures. Want to see them now? Jia hesitated, then nodded. As Hyunwoo scrolled through images of Bori playing, sleeping, and goofing around, Jia's glow brightened. He looks almost friendly, she said with wonder. He is friendly. Hyunwoo laughed. That is what I have been trying to explain. Maybe this exchange program would work out after all. 3 weeks had passed since Hyunwoo arrived at the institute, and things were getting better. Most students still avoided him in the hallways, but a small group had started sitting with him at lunch. Jia was there every day, along with Taeyang, who was slowly overcoming his fear, and Bora, who claimed she was never afraid in the first place, though everyone knew that was not entirely true. They asked him endless questions about Earth, and Hyunwoo did his best to answer, without making his planet sound too terrifying. Today was special because Professor Velthar was taking the xenobiology class on a field trip. They were going to visit the station's exotic wildlife preserve, a massive facility that housed dangerous creatures from across the galaxy. The preserve was designed to study and protect species that could not survive on other worlds, and it had the most advanced containment systems ever built. Remember, Professor Velthar announced as the class gathered at the preserve entrance, these animals are extremely dangerous. Many of them are apex predators from their respective worlds. You must stay behind the barriers at all times and follow every instruction from the tour guide. A tall, thin creature with silver skin and 4 arms met them at the door. Its name was Kirin, and it wore the uniform of a preserve keeper. Welcome, students. I am honored to show you our facility today. We house over 200 species here, including some of the most formidable predators known to science. Please stay close and do not make sudden movements or loud noises. The class moved through the first section, which held herbivores and small omnivores. Even these relatively harmless creatures made some students nervous. Taeyang kept checking the distance between himself and every enclosure, and several students stayed in the middle of the group, as far from the barriers as possible. Then they entered the carnivore section and the atmosphere changed completely. The lighting was dimmer here and the air felt heavier. Low growls and strange clicking sounds echoed through the corridors. Behind thick transparent barriers and shimmering energy fields, massive creatures paced and watched the group with intelligent eyes. This is the Krell beast, Kirin explained, gesturing to an enclosure holding something that looked like a cross between a lizard and a bear. It was covered in thick scales and had claws as long as Hyunwoo's forearm. native to the swamp worlds of the Krell system. It can crush bone with its jaws and swim faster than most species can run. The students pressed together, moving away from the barrier, all except Hyunwoo, who walked closer and studied the creature with interest. "It moves like a crocodile," he said quietly. "A what?" Jia asked from behind him. "A crocodile. They are reptiles on Earth, very ancient. They have been around for millions of years. This one has similar body structure." Kieran looked at Hyunwoo with what might have been respect. "You have such creatures on your world?" "Yes, in rivers and swamps. They are ambush predators. Very patient, very strong." Several students made worried sounds. Bora muttered something about humans being completely insane to live on such a planet. They moved through the section, seeing creature after creature that made the students gasp and step back. There was a flying predator with razor-sharp wings from a high-gravity world, a pack of small but vicious hunters that could strip flesh from bone in seconds, a massive armored creature that could smash through solid rock. Hyunwoo remained calm through all of it, often making comparisons to Earth animals. "That one looks like a bear. This one moves like a wolf pack. Those are like army ants but bigger." His classmates thought he was either very brave or very stupid, possibly both. Then they reached the largest enclosure in the section. Inside, barely visible in the shadows, was something that made even Kieran speak in a hushed voice. "This is a Raxcor," the guide said. "From the Outer Rim territories. They are solitary hunters, highly intelligent and extremely dangerous. 6 legs, venomous bite, and strong enough to drag prey 3 times their size up into trees. We have only managed to keep 5 specimens in captivity across the entire galaxy." The Raxcor moved into the light, and it was terrifying, as large as an Earth tiger with 6 powerful legs that ended in curved claws. Its head was broad with a mouth full of needle-like teeth. Its eyes were deep gold and watched the students with unsettling awareness. The creature's fur was dark blue with black stripes and muscles rippled under its skin with every movement. "It is beautiful," Hyunwoo said. Every head turned to look at him. Even Professor Velthar seemed shocked. "Beautiful?" Taeyang squeaked. "That thing could kill everyone in this room in seconds." "So could a tiger," Hyunwoo replied, still watching the Raxcor. "But they are still beautiful. Look at how it moves. Perfect balance. Every muscle working together. And those eyes. It is really smart. You can tell." The Raxcor seemed to notice Hyunwoo watching it. It tilted its head slightly and stared back. For a long moment, human and alien predator studied each other through the barrier. "It reminds me of my sister's cat," Hyunwoo said. "Mira. She has that same look when she's hunting toy mice." "That is not a cat," Bora said firmly. "That is a nightmare with 6 legs. Mira would be offended by that," Hyunwoo laughed. "Cats have feelings, you know." Jia moved closer to Hyunwoo, still keeping a safe distance from the barrier. "You really are not afraid of it?" "I respect it," Hyunwoo corrected. "There is a difference. Fear makes you stupid. Respect makes you careful. That Raxcor is dangerous, yes, but it is also just an animal trying to survive. Like everything else." Kieran looked at Hyunwoo with definite respect now. "You would make a good keeper, human. Not many can look at a Raxcor without fear." "We have plenty of practice on Earth," Hyunwoo said with a shrug. They continued the tour, entering sections with even more exotic creatures. There were predators that could camouflage perfectly, hunters that used electric shocks, pack animals with coordination that bordered on telepathic. The class saw wonders and terrors from 100 different worlds. Hyunwoo found all of it fascinating. He asked questions about their behavior, their diets, and their natural habitats. He took notes and photos. He seemed completely comfortable in a place where most students could barely breathe from anxiety. "Do you miss your home?" Jia asked during a brief rest period. The class had stopped in an observation lounge that overlooked several enclosures. "Every day," Hyunwoo admitted, "I miss my family. I miss Bori. I miss the mountains near my house. But I am also really happy to be here, learning about all these amazing creatures, meeting new people like you." Jia's crystalline features glowed warmly. "I am glad you came here. You have taught me that fear is not always wise. Sometimes curiosity is better." "That is very wise," Hyunwoo said. Taeyang joined them, looking exhausted from all the nervous energy he had been spending.
"How much longer is this tour?"
"My hearts cannot take much more." "You have more than one heart?" Hyunwoo asked with interest. 3, Taeyang confirmed, "and all of them are beating too fast right now." "We are almost finished," Kieran announced to the group. We will conclude the tour with a visit to Section 7. This is our high-danger containment area. The creatures there require the most advanced security measures. Please follow me and remember to stay behind all marked lines. The class moved down a long corridor that got darker as they went. The barriers here were thicker, the energy fields more visible. Warning signs covered the walls in multiple languages. These creatures, Kieran explained, are the most dangerous specimens in our collection. Some of them are the last of their kind. Others are too aggressive to exist anywhere else. We study them to better understand predatory behavior across the galaxy. They passed enclosures holding creatures that seemed pulled from nightmares. Things with too many teeth, animals that moved wrong, predators that felt unnatural even behind the strongest barriers, and then the alarm started. A high-pitched wailing filled the corridor. Red lights flashed. Kieran's forearms moved rapidly over a control panel on the wall, and the guide's silver skin went pale. "What is happening?" Professor Velthar demanded. "Containment failure," Kieran said, and the fear in its voice made every student freeze. "Section 7, High Danger Zone. Which enclosure?" the professor asked. Kieran looked up from the panel and its eyes were wide. "The Void Stalker." Taeyang made a sound like a dying fish. Bora went rigid. Jia's glow dimmed to almost nothing. Even students who had stayed brave throughout the entire tour now looked terrified. "We need to evacuate," Kieran said quickly. "Security protocols require lockdown of this section, but we can reach the emergency exits if we move now." The guide started leading them back the way they came, but then a different alarm sounded. Metal barriers began dropping from the ceiling, sealing off the corridor behind them. "No," Kieran whispered. "The automatic containment systems. They are trapping us in. Can you override them?" Professor Velthar asked, trying to stay calm. "I am trying." Kieran worked frantically at another control panel, but the system is not responding. "We are locked in." And then they heard it, a sound like silk being torn, a low hum that made the air vibrate, and from somewhere in the darkness ahead, two glowing eyes appeared. The Void Stalker had found them. The Void Stalker emerged from the shadows like a nightmare becoming real. Its body was massive, easily twice the size of the Rax core they had seen earlier. Sleek black fur absorbed the emergency lights, making it look like a moving hole in space. Four legs moved with perfect silence despite the creature's size. Its head was elegant and deadly, with a long snout full of teeth that gleamed white against its dark face. But the worst part was its eyes. They glowed with an eerie blue light, intelligent and cold, and they were looking directly at the group of terrified students. The creature's reputation was legendary across the galaxy. Void Stalkers came from the dark nebula systems, regions of space where light barely penetrated and evolution had created perfect hunters. They could phase through solid matter for short distances, making containment nearly impossible. They were smart enough to solve complex problems and remember faces. They hunted in complete silence and struck without warning. Only 17 specimens existed in captivity across the entire galaxy, and every single one was considered a critical containment priority, and now one was standing between the students and their only exit. Taeyang collapsed. He just folded up and hit the floor, his three hearts apparently deciding that unconsciousness was better than dealing with this situation. Bora tried to shield smaller students with her forearms, pressing them against the wall. Several others were crying, making high-pitched distress calls that their species used when facing death. Jia stood frozen, her crystalline body flickering between colors so fast it looked like she might shatter. Professor Velthar stepped in front of the students, holding up their hands in what must have been a peaceful gesture. "Stay calm, everyone. Do not make sudden movements. Security will be here soon." But Kieran shook their head, working desperately at the control panel. "The lockdown protocols have cut off this section. Security cannot get through. They will need at least 15 minutes to override the system." "We do not have 15 minutes, Bora whispered. The Void Stalker took a step forward. Its movements were liquid smooth, like water flowing downhill. The emergency lights reflected in its glowing eyes. It lowered its head and made a sound that was half growl, half purr, and completely terrifying. Several students screamed. The creature's ears flattened against its skull, its muscles tensed. The screaming was making it aggressive. Hyunwoo could see it in the way the Void Stalker's body language changed. Its tail, which had been relaxed, now lashed back and forth. Its lips pulled back to show more teeth. This was bad. The creature was going from cautious to hostile. Everyone stopped screaming. Hyunwoo said firmly. You are scaring it. We are scaring it. Bora's voice went up 3 octaves. That thing is about to kill us all. Not if you stop panicking, Hyunwoo insisted. He was watching the Voidstalker carefully, reading its body language the way he would read a nervous dog or an angry cat. Look at its ears. They are flat, because the noise is hurting them, and its tail is lashing because it feels threatened. We are making it defensive. What do we do? Jia asked, her voice shaking but trusting. Everyone be quiet and still, Hyunwoo said. Do not look directly at it. That is aggressive in most predator species. Just stay calm and give it space. Professor Velthar looked at Hyunwoo with surprise but nodded and quietly instructed the students to follow his advice. The screaming stopped, replaced by terrified silence. Students looked at the floor or the walls, anywhere but at the massive predator in front of them. The Voidstalker paused. Its ears came forward slightly. Its tail slowed its lashing. The creature seemed confused by this sudden change in behavior. Hyunwoo took a slow breath and did something that made everyone who was still conscious think he had lost his mind. He stepped forward, moving out from behind Professor Velthar and into the open space between the students and the Voidstalker. No, Jia breathed. Hyunwoo, do not. But Hyunwoo was already moving. He walked slowly, taking small steps, keeping his body relaxed and his movements smooth. When he was about 3 meters from the Voidstalker, he stopped. Then he did something even more insane. He crouched down, making himself smaller and less threatening. The Voidstalker tilted its head, watching this strange behavior. Its glowing eyes narrowed in what might have been curiosity. Hyunwoo slowly extended one hand, palm down, fingers loose. He made a soft clicking sound with his tongue, the same sound he used to call Bori when his dog was nervous. He kept his eyes averted, looking at the creature's chest rather than its face. Every movement was deliberate and calm. Good, he said softly. You are okay. Nobody here wants to hurt you. The Voidstalker took a step closer, then another. It was moving toward Hyunwoo with its head low and ears forward, the posture of an animal that was curious but cautious. Behind Hyunwoo, someone whimpered. He wished they would stay quiet, but he could not blame them. From their perspective, he was about to die. That is right, Hyunwoo continued in that same soft voice. Come here. Let me see you. The creature was close enough now that Hyunwoo could feel the heat radiating from its body. It smelled like ozone and something wild, like the forest after rain. The Voidstalker stretched its neck forward and sniffed at Hyunwoo's extended hand. Its nose was wet and cold. Hyunwoo held perfectly still, letting the creature investigate him. This was the moment. If the Voidstalker decided he was prey, it would strike now. Hyunwoo kept breathing slowly and thinking calm thoughts. He thought about Bori sleeping on his bed. He thought about his sister's cats purring on the couch. He thought about the time he helped rescue a stray dog from a storm drain. He let all that calmness flow through him. The Voidstalker finished sniffing his hand. It lifted its head and looked directly into Hyunwoo's eyes. For a long moment, human and alien predators stared at each other. Then slowly, Hyunwoo raised his other hand. He moved it toward the creature's head, giving it plenty of time to pull away or bite. The Voidstalker watched but did not move. Hyunwoo's fingers touched the creature's head just behind where its ears attached. The fur was incredibly soft, softer than any cat. He scratched gently, the way Bori liked to be scratched, using his fingernails to get through the thick fur to the skin underneath. The Voidstalker's eyes half closed. Its ears relaxed, and then it made a sound that no one in the corridor had ever heard before, a deep rumbling purr that vibrated through the floor. Oh my gods, Bora whispered. It is purring. The apex predator is purring. The Voidstalker leaned into Hyunwoo's touch, pushing its head against his hand the way a cat would. Its tail, which had been lashing with aggression moments before, now swayed gently from side to side. The creature's entire body language had changed from hostile to relaxed. Hyunwoo kept scratching, moving to different spots around its head and neck, finding the places that made the purring get louder. You just wanted some attention, did you not? Hyunwoo said softly. Locked in a cage all alone. That must be hard. I bet you miss your home. The Voidstalker pushed its entire head under Hyunwoo's arm, nuzzling against him. It was like being hugged by a very large, very dangerous house cat. Hyunwoo shifted his position and used both hands to scratch along the creature's neck and shoulders. The purring got so loud that it echoed off the walls. Behind him, Hyunwoo could hear whispered conversations. This is impossible. That creature killed 3 trained handlers on its homeworld. The human is petting it. Why is it not eating him? Gia's voice cut through the whispers. Can someone please explain what is happening right now? Professor Velthar spoke quietly, their voice full of wonder. I believe we are witnessing something unprecedented. The human is communicating with the Void Stalker through body language and behavior. It is treating the creature as a social animal rather than a threat. But Void Stalkers are not social, Kieran said, watching from their position at the control panel. They are solitary hunters. They do not bond with other creatures. Maybe they just never had the chance, Hyunwoo said, still scratching behind the Void Stalker's ears. Maybe nobody ever tried to be nice to them. Lots of animals seem mean because they are scared or lonely. The Void Stalker flopped down onto its side, exposing its belly to Hyunwoo. In the language of predators across the galaxy, this was the ultimate sign of trust. The creature was making itself vulnerable, showing that it did not see Hyunwoo as a threat. He scratched its belly carefully, avoiding the powerful claws, and the purring somehow got even louder. Security is requesting status, Kieran said, working at their control panel. They want to know if they should bring weapons. No weapons, Hyunwoo said quickly. That will just make it scared again. Tell them to come slowly and quietly, and maybe bring some food. What do Void Stalkers eat? Raw meat, Kieran replied, still sounding dazed. Usually about 5 kilograms per feeding. Ask them to bring some. I think our friend here might be hungry and stressed. That is probably why it escaped. It was looking for food and comfort. You are calling it our friend, Bora said flatly. That is a Void Stalker, one of the most dangerous creatures ever discovered. And you are calling it our friend. It has a name? Hyunwoo asked. The security team arrived 12 minutes later and they came prepared for a disaster. 6 heavily armored guards carrying stun weapons and containment equipment burst through the emergency override door, ready to face the escaped Void Stalker. What they found instead made them stop in their tracks. Hyunwoo was sitting cross-legged on the floor with Shadow's massive head resting in his lap. The deadly predator was on its back, all 4 legs in the air while the human scratched its belly and made soft cooing sounds. The creature's eyes were half closed in contentment, and it was purring so loudly that the security team could feel it vibrating through their boots. What in the name of the ancients? The security chief breathed. She was a stocky creature with gray skin and multiple cybernetic enhancements. Her name tag read Captain Yuna. Hello, Hyunwoo said cheerfully. I think Shadow just needed some company. Do you have the food I asked for? Captain Yuna gestured, and one of her team members cautiously approached with a container of fresh meat. Shadow's ears perked up at the smell, but the Void Stalker did not move aggressively. Instead, it made a questioning chirp and looked at Hyunwoo. It is okay, Hyunwoo told Shadow. That is for you. He took the container and set it down next to Shadow. The Void Stalker rolled to its feet in one smooth motion and began eating, but slowly, calmly. Nothing like the violent feeding behavior documented in its file. Between bites, Shadow would look back at Hyunwoo as if checking that he was still there. Someone explain this, Captain Yuna demanded. Right now. Professor Velthar stepped forward, their 3 eyes blinking rapidly. The human student approached the Void Stalker when it appeared hostile. He used body language and vocalizations to calm it. The creature responded positively. They have been like this for the past 12 minutes. That is impossible. Void Stalkers do not respond to social bonding. They are apex predators with no natural pack behavior. Maybe you just never tried being nice to them, Hyunwoo suggested, still watching Shadow eat. Animals are smart. They respond to kindness. Even predators. Taeyang, who had regained consciousness a few minutes earlier, spoke up from where he sat against the wall. Is this normal human behavior? Approaching deadly creatures and petting them? Kind of, Hyunwoo admitted. I mean, not everyone does it. But lots of humans work with dangerous animals. We have people who study sharks by swimming with them. People who live with wolves. People who rescue big cats and bears. We have been doing it for thousands of years. Captain Yuna looked at Professor Velthar. Did you know humans were capable of this? We knew they came from a death world. We knew they had unusual tolerance for danger. But this... Professor Velthar gestured at Hyunwoo and Shadow. This is beyond our understanding. Shadow finished eating and walked back to Hyunwoo, rubbing its massive head against his shoulder. The human laughed and scratched behind the creature's ears. Good boy. Feel better now? It is not a pet, Captain Yuna said, though her voice had lost some of its certainty. I know that. Shadow is a wild animal with specific needs and behaviors, but that does not mean we cannot be friends. Hyunwoo looked up at the security chief. What is going to happen now? Are you going to put Shadow back in that little cage? The containment enclosure is rated for Class A dangerous specimens. It meets all galactic standards. It is still a cage. Shadow was probably going crazy in there. Do void stalkers need environmental enrichment? Mental stimulation? Social interaction? Kiran, who had been quietly observing everything, spoke up. We provide food, water, appropriate temperature, and lighting. That is standard protocol for all specimens. But nothing else. No toys, no puzzles, no interaction with handlers. Hyunwoo shook his head. No wonder Shadow tried to escape. The poor thing was bored and lonely. Void stalkers are dangerous, Captain Yuna insisted. 3 trained handlers died trying to transport this specimen. We cannot treat it like a domestic animal. Those handlers probably approached wrong. Did they try to dominate it? Control it? Most predators hate that. You have to earn their trust. Hyunwoo stood up slowly and Shadow immediately pressed against his side. Look, I am not saying everyone should be able to walk in and pet Shadow, but maybe if the creature had better living conditions and positive interactions with careful handlers, it would not be so aggressive. Professor Velthar moved closer, fascinated. What would you suggest? Bigger enclosure with things to climb and explore? Regular feeding schedule so Shadow does not get anxious about food. Puzzle feeders to keep the brain active. And gradual socialization with handlers who understand predator behavior. Start slow, build trust, and never use force or fear. You learned all this from keeping pets? Bora asked. She had gradually moved closer during the conversation, her fear being replaced by curiosity. From pets, yes, but also from watching nature documentaries and reading about animal behavior. Humans study this stuff a lot. We find animals interesting. Jia had been quiet, but now she glowed brightly with excitement. Could you teach us how to understand animal behavior like you do? I can try. I am not an expert or anything, but I can share what I know. Captain Yuna was talking quietly into her communication device. After a moment, she looked at Hyunwoo. My superiors want to know if you can help us get the Void Stalker back into containment without incident. Can I make a different suggestion? What if we move Shadow to a better habitat first? I think forcing the creature back into that small enclosure will just make things worse. It will remember being trapped and scared. We do not have time to build new facilities. What about a temporary setup? Maybe in one of the larger observation areas? Somewhere Shadow can move around while you prepare proper accommodations. Captain Yuna consulted her device again. There was a long pause while she listened to responses. Finally, she nodded. Administration has approved a temporary relocation to Habitat 3. It is normally used for orientation groups, but it can be secured. Can you guide the Void Stalker there? I can try. Hyunwoo looked down at Shadow. Want to go for a walk? Come on. He started walking down the corridor and Shadow followed immediately, staying close to his side. The massive predator moved with complete trust, occasionally looking up at Hyunwoo as if checking for direction. The security team walked behind them at a careful distance, weapons ready but not raised. The students followed too, unable to believe what they were seeing. This is the strangest day of my life, Taeyang muttered. And I once accidentally teleported into a star. How are you still alive if you teleported into a star? Bora asked. It was a very small star and I was only there for 0.3 seconds. Jia drifted up next to Hyunwoo, staying on the side away from Shadow. Are you afraid at all? She asked quietly. A little, Hyunwoo admitted. Shadow is strong and dangerous. If the creature wanted to hurt me, I could not stop it. But I do not think Shadow wants to hurt anyone. Just wants to feel safe and maybe have a friend. Why do humans do this? Risk themselves for animals? Hyunwoo thought about it. I guess because we understand what it is like to be scared and alone. And because animals make our lives better. They give us love and companionship. They teach us patience and empathy. Some of humanity's closest relationships are with other species. It feels right to help them when we can. They reached Habitat 3. A large open space with various terrain features and observation windows. It was at least 10 times the size of Shadow's previous enclosure. Captain Yuna worked the controls and a doorway opened into the habitat. Will Shadow go in? Professor Velthar asked. Hyunwoo walked through the doorway and Shadow followed without hesitation. Once inside, the Void Stalker began exploring immediately, climbing on the rock formations and sniffing everything. After a few minutes of investigation, Shadow returned to Hyunwoo and made a chirping sound. "I think that is approval," Hyunwoo said with a smile. He spent another 20 minutes with Shadow, playing and establishing that this was a safe space. The Void Stalker seemed to understand that this was its new territory. When it was time for Hyunwoo to leave, Shadow followed him to the door but did not try to escape. Instead, the creature sat down and watched him go, still purring softly. "I will visit tomorrow if they let me," Hyunwoo promised. "Be good, okay?" Outside the habitat, the entire group stood in silence for a moment. Then Professor Velthar spoke. "I believe we have all witnessed something important today, not just one human's unusual talent, but a fundamental difference in how humans perceive and interact with other species. This deserves study and discussion." Captain Yuna nodded slowly. "I will recommend that the station hire you as a consultant for the Preserve human. Clearly you have skills we lack." "I am just a student," Hyunwoo protested. "A student who just calmed a Void Stalker by scratching its ears. That is not a common skill." As they walked back toward the institute, students surrounded Hyunwoo with questions. How did he know what to do? Was he not terrified? Could he teach them? What other Earth animals could he interact with like that? Taeyang, looking much healthier now that the danger had passed, asked,